Ready to hit the pause button on your parenting fails? Ready to feel better about your parenting? Welcome to Parenting Pause, the podcast, where all of you is welcome and where you can listen in on how other parents became the parents they always dreamed of being. I'm Leslie Potter, the founder of the Pure Joy Parenting Way. I'm a mother, a parenting coach, and a fellow traveler on this journey to wake up in our parenting. And I believe together we can make this a better world for ourselves and our kiddos. I am so happy to have you here because we've been hanging out for quite a long time, and I'd
Yep.
love to hear what was going on for you in your home when you found me.
I had a baby and a toddler, and my toddler was having big feelings about having a brother. I had waited for him for years and years and years. We'd had a very, very close relationship before he was born, actually, and then after he was born. And I'm an only child, too, so the two of us were adjusting to having these big feelings around the amazing wonder of our family growing, but also, sharing and stuff. And so Enzo, my eldest, was getting angry, and so was I. I was also on my own a lot. My husband was traveling a lot. I felt like I was doing a lot of the parenting on my own, and I started getting really angry, reactive. Also, I was trying to be a perfect parent. That was the other thing, because I'd learned about attachment parenting. I'd done a lot of work on myself. I'd done a lot of psychotherapy, years, like about 12 years, probably. I wanted to give my kids at that stage the perfect, the perfect attachment, the perfect secure attachment. And I was reading all these parenting people, and then I came across you, and everybody was telling me I needed to be a calm parent. And nobody told me how to do it. It was like, oh, right. So she's going to help me get there. She's not going to just tell me what to do. And that was why I started working with you.
What was the difference in this style or this view of parenting than what you'd been reading?
Well, everything was different. Well, first of all, you embodied what you were talking about. I knew on an intuitive, instinctive level that you had done the work and that you were really embodying what you were teaching. And I knew that for me, it was really important to find teachers that did that.
And why was that important to you?
Because I needed to trust who I was learning with. And I'm really willing to be open and learn from people that I deeply trust. And I can't fake trust on a body felt sense. And I trusted you on a body felt sense. So I could also bring my whole self to you, so I wasn't judged. There was space to bring the shadow part of me, which in some of the other stuff that you read, I think maybe intellectually there's space to bring the shadow side of you, but I didn't necessarily get a real sense that I could really, really bring the dirty side of me, the parts of me that I'm really ashamed of, the parts of my parenting that I wouldn't tell anybody, the parts that I would like to hide away from the world, And in order for me to be whole, I need to bring all those parts. Otherwise it just doesn't work.
I know you were part of our very first group, and that was such an amazing experience of a group of mamas that were willing to share in that way.
God, it was great. But it was also the most beautiful example I've ever had of holding of a group that you did is a real skill. And that was another reason I kept coming back to that group. It was just really beautiful the way you facilitated that group and held that group.
So I'm hearing in having some place where you could come, where you could actually share that shadow side of you, and not, I think so many of us hide behind closed doors. And again, with Facebook, again, we try to look really good on the outside, but inside we often are feeling quite isolated and shameful. So it sounds like in having that place to be able to come and being held in a place of kindness and compassion, that it actually gave you something. So I'm curious about how that began to shift your parenting.
Yeah, it wasn't a road to Damascus conversion overnight. Suddenly I was this fantastic, calm person, because it's not how it worked, because it was real work, and it was dirty work. It was like, not dirty work, it was deep, So there was still a very frustrating period of months where I was still shouting and I was still reacting in ways that I didn't want to with Enzo. Losing faith in myself, losing faith in the process, and you kept being able to hold that. You didn't get impatient with me. And eventually something shifted in me. And I think that for those of us that have been, or not necessarily been brought up, but somehow internalized a very harsh internal dialogue, or who have had very intense, overwhelming feelings that that weren't always held, we need to have a sense of safety embodied in another as we learn to hold it in ourselves. Gradually, I was able to start providing the space inside me, and also to start shifting the thoughts and to actually believe in these ideas that you were suggesting, that I might want to treat myself with kindness even when I was feeling desperate or depressed or scared or furious or whatever. Somewhere along the line, that did shift. And the way I treat myself now is not the same as the way I treated myself when my big boy was 2 and I had a little baby at all. And the way I treat my children is also different, and I'm not perfect.
I really want parents to know this, that yes, as Olivia says, this is not an overnight process, because we didn't get here overnight. We practiced our habitual patterns, and they're safety patterns, as you say, they're survival patterns, and we practice them since we were born. But what I see from this side is that you begin to trust yourself. You begin to trust that you had a compassionate, kind part in you that could actually have a relationship with your shadow. And then you're so beautifully describing it is that then you begin to offer that kindness and that love to your boys. Let's walk through, let's say when they were 2, and when Enzo was 2, when you started, and he would have a rage fit, and then you would have a rage, how you handle it, and then how you might handle it today.
It seems a really long time ago. When Enzo was 2, there would be no space. There's the famous quote that everybody says, in between the space between the stimulus and the response lies our freedom. There was no space between the stimulus and the response when Enzo was 2 for me, because I would immediately get triggered into a place of overwhelm, and then that would very quickly come out as rage. So I would shout. Sometimes I even picked him up in ways that were rough, which I am, still don't feel good about. Made amends to him later on. I would behave in ways that scared me and scared him. I would have this cycle of guilt and shame afterwards, which made it even harder to sort of change the behavior.
Sounds like the consequence of that loop was that you could never find kindness or compassion for yourself, that you were always in that reactive place, and then would beat yourself up and promise to never do it again. And then the next day it would go around and around the circle.
And I felt desperate because, it was like, how come I can have done all this work on myself, read all this stuff, worked with all these people, and still it's so difficult in the moment to not go down this whole dialogue around I'm a failure and all that. Very painful. It was deeply painful.
It's really hard to face into that pain, so we keep trying harder, to consequence harder, punish harder, or try to control more. And I know for you, that was quite a shift when you began to learn the safe seat process. I remember you making a commitment to beginning to turn back toward yourself.
Yeah, no, I did. And, I'm a child of alcoholics. And, many adult children alcoholics are deeply sensitive to the external environment and many of us have a kind of body and a sensory system and a nervous system that is kind of on overdrive, So we react really strongly to any other stimulus and outside stimulus, which can be really great because it means you can be really empathic and really deeply loving. And it also can mean that you get flooded really easily and you feel intense fear inside your body, or you feel other people's anger inside your body. And it's kind of like you can't handle it. You kind of dissociate from it.
Well, you do handle it, but you do that through disassociation.
Yeah, so this process, which, it started off with this safe seating, and then complemented by like all the other sort of work I've done, like repatterning my nervous system and stuff, has been around creating a space inside me from the outside stimulus so that I can respond the way I want to, actually, rather than with this kind of habitual anger, with more choice and more playfulness.
Exactly. As I say, we grow ourselves up in that pause and that space. We can actually grow ourselves up to come into the present reality, where when you're in the triggered reality, you're not even there with your children any longer. You're back in an early reactive place, and you're of course going to pull on your childhood strategies. The whole point of this work is that as we learn to sit with ourselves, which you're describing so beautifully, and we learn to safe seat and we learn to offer kindness, we begin to grow up, and within that pause, then we can find our adult capacities, as you say, to show up and really be there for our children.
And it's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. What does it look like? Walk us through.
Well, I mean, I'd like to first of all say haven't suddenly become the Dalai Lama. I mean, I am able to take things a lot less personally. So now I can much more easily connect with and hold space for how I want to respond, rather than defaulting into what I feel pressurized, the way I feel pressurized to respond. And with Enzo, I can kind of more easily, more often soften inside myself. And it is like literally, because it's one of the things I also learned mostly through you and also through the other work, the dance work, is to distinguish between feelings and sensations. So I can inquire, like, what is the felt sensation in my body? And what I found a lot was that my pattern is to carry a lot of pain around my chest area and around my throat and my sternum. And so when I soften that area, it becomes a lot easier to create space to hold whatever Enzo is coming out at. And to trust that it's, when I can receive that energy, it's amazing, actually. It sometimes is a bit like an exploding octopus, and then suddenly it just goes away. It melts away. And the other thing as well is, like, I thought, I'm reading A plus B equals C, 1 plus 2 is 3. I'm reading these peaceful parenting books, therefore I should have nice, calm children, right? This is how it works. Isn't this how it works? And a good child is a peaceful child, right? So if I'm doing this right, my kids won't get angry. And if they're angry, I'm doing something wrong. Wow, that means my kids never have the right to get angry or to have their own feelings, because it's always a reflection on me. Like, no wonder this whole dialogue in my head was going. So I thank you to our work. I'm able to, like, let them have their experience, but also to accept them for who they are.
It's not even them that you think are bad or wrong. It's that you've learned to deny that part inside of you. So in our culture, we think we want all appropriate and happy and good and all of that, but that's a one-sided experience, right? Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that in our culture now. When we raise that one-sided experience, we see where the other side has to come out in violence, underground, in sneaky ways. because we are live in a relative world. We live in the yin and the yang. And so if you just want to live on the yin side, which is all the connecting, the loving, the peaceful, right? Most likely, often I found in my parenting when I did that, my daughter took on the yang side. So she was holding the aggression and the intensity and the violence and all of that. And the more I tried to control that and get rid of it to get her to be peaceful, the more intense it got.
Yeah.
So in my work, I began to learn that I had really repressed my healthy aggression. I had repressed my healthy expression of separation because in my family that was quite dangerous. So until I was willing to go and reclaim that, I wasn't able to create, as you're talking about, that ground for my daughter to be able to have a full experience, not a one-sided experience of herself.
Yeah.
It's pretty darn powerful, but that's why people get confused, because if we're trying to be often the shadow of conscious parenting, we're always trying to be peaceful and kind and loving, and then we have an angry, violent child. Well, okay, we got balance, right? I mean, again, the system's always trying to find balance. So I try to tell parents, if you've got an angry, violent, intense, aggressive child, you might want to look at how you've repressed your own healthy aggression, how you've repressed your own need for separation. I had repressed my neediness. And because in my family, that wasn't really, there wasn't a lot of extra room for extra needs. I was a third child and there wasn't much money. So I had repressed that. So what do? I go adopt a child from China that is one big need machine.
Yes.
And it was so intense for me. All I wanted to do was to get her to stop needing. Right? It was so painful. It's like, get off of me
Yeah.
at some point. But what I had to learn was that I had done that to my own needy self.
Yeah. And I think with me, I had not accepted the intensity of my own emotions.
Exactly.
And so it took me having beautifully vibrant children with really intense emotions to be able to start accepting it in them and in me.
And as you described, when we do, then the child can relax and they get to take on a more normal polarity. The more I was able to take care of myself, set healthy personal boundaries, then my daughter didn't have to hold the other polarity. We're seeking balance. And often in our culture, we want to land on one side or the other, right? We get one-sided. And so we get excited by self-reliance or independence, or by dependence and connection and loving. And what we're working with here, and I just want to say this just because I've seen it so often in the conscious parenting, that mamas often, we want to be that peaceful, loving, as you said, kind, always connecting person. And yet that is extremely engulfing to the child when that is the only side that we're willing to let be in the family.
Yeah. And I mean, I think with you, that's one of the things that we worked on an awful lot. And I think we both have maybe learned similar patterns from our families of origin, which was this kind of tendency to go between the two extremes of engulfment and abandonment.
Yeah.
So for me, like this work in the last 8 years, it's been trying to find a kind of dance between these two states.
Like riding a bicycle, right? When you ride a bicycle, if you get too far on one side, you're going to fall over. If you get too far on the other side, you're going to fall over. And so it is a dance, as you're describing. It's not either side. It's not connection or separation. It's a constant dance within inside of our being to find that balance. And our children, I found my daughter will show me what side I'm too far on, because she's usually going to hold the other side, right? And it's like, oh, it looks like, I'm a little too engulfing. When she starts showing her rage and her intensity, I'll just go, I think I'm a little too engulfing on that connection side. I think I need to start setting some healthy boundaries here and coming back into myself. And then we come into balance.
Like for the first 3 years, I think I don't know whether I was engulfing, but I was trying to kind of like perfectly provide for their needs, while simultaneously learning with you that actually secure attachment was about being securely attached to myself. Now I feel I have more balance, or we have more balance, me and the children and I, in our relationship. And who knows how it will be tomorrow, because that's the thing, it's always shifting. It's not like you get there,
Always. We're always riding that bicycle.
So, yeah. But on the other hand, I can say that I'm happier with things how they are now to how they were 8 years ago.
Yes.
And still, it's not like, oh yeah, right, I've got it. It's easy now. I'm gonna know always how to do parenting.
That's just the nature of life. What stands out the most for you as far as the impact that this work has had on your life?
I mean, I guess I would say the kindness practice, the deepening. It's like peeling the layers of an onion, because you can always go deeper. You can always go deeper. I'm still working with you now. I love to learn, and I have a lot of crap to uncover, with my history. So, but this embodying kindness to myself, that has been a real shift.
And I'll just say, since I've been with you so long, what stands out the most for me is your exquisite capacity to turn back towards yourself in a self-loving way, even when things are challenging. And I want people to know this. It's not like life gets perfect. You still have challenges. That's how we grow. But I've been able to watch you come back towards yourself, back towards yourself, back towards yourself in a loving way. It just touches me very deeply that your commitment to yourself is so powerful.
I like to say I like to dig for the joy, So being able to be in touch with the side of me that is joyful and creative and playful. And then I've been able to share that with my children. And my children are my pole star, which they really ground me and they really motivate me to do this work. But at the same time, I'm doing the work for me as well. Definitely.
All right, love. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Speak to you soon.
Much gratitude to Olivia for joining me today to share her profound shifts in her parenting, as well as her relationship with herself. Parenting Paused is produced by Kim Paletti at Sound Mind Productions. Music by Jan Perchik. You can find the show notes at www.purejoyparenting.com, where you'll get access to the foundational practice of Pure Joy, the safe seat, and find links to relevant topics, as well as a transcription of the show. And if this work inspires you and you would like to practice, come join us in my free Pure Joy Parenting Practice group. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thank you for being here today and listening to the Parenting Pause podcast, your partner and support in finding the joy in yourself and with your children. And remember, if you're about to scream, pause.